Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Goffman. Congratulations on your nomination here. I just came from a Commerce Committee meeting where I was fairly riled up because I was highlighting the Biden administration's, now it's 25 executive orders and executive actions singularly focused on Alaska. 25. These hurt jobs, resource development, access to land. Particularly, they target the Native community. Your former and current boss, Gina McCarthy, is someone who's got enormous disdain for my state. I've seen it in action. Senator Murkowski, the late, great Congressman Don Young, and I had a senior meeting at the White House in December saying, can you please just let up, guys? You're killing us. Targeting my state, our state. How about at least a heads up when you're going to try to crush us the next time? They haven't kept those commitments. These are very senior White House officials. We asked for a meeting with the president, see if he knows that his administration is singularly targeting one state more than any other state in the country. Can I get your commitment, if you're confirmed, that before you issue any kind of reg or rule or executive action from your position that singularly targets Alaska, that you'll reach out to me and Senator Murkowski and maybe get our views, maybe get our opinions? I was just home last week, and my constituents are just, and this is Democrats, Republicans, Native, non-Native, we are just daily assault on the good people. We're Americans too, right? But nobody in the Biden administration seems to care. Can I get your commitment to give me and Senator Murkowski a heads up if you're planning to do something like this?
Senator, I think I can say that the Environmental Protection Agency has experience looking at Alaska issues specifically and, if you will, tailoring the requirements of our actions that work for Alaska.
So that's a yes?
It's a yes, not just informing, but consulting.
Good, thank you. I want to show you this real quick. I use this chart a lot. That's emissions, global emissions from each major country in the world since 2005. The U.S. has actually been the global leader on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. You look at China, you look at India, they're through the roof. Do you have an explanation for that? You think it's EPA regulations that did that? It wasn't, was it? Well, what's the reason for that? Why are we the best in the world right now on global emissions almost for the last over 15 years?
I think because of the sort of fruitful interaction of EPA standard setting and the...
No, it had very little to do with the EPA. It was a revolution in the production of natural gas, right? You might want to read up on that since you're going to be in charge of air. That's why, right there. So when you hear about, hey, let's attack natural gas, you might want to think twice. If every country in the world had that global emissions profile, we wouldn't be having major greenhouse gas emissions problems globally. So just wanted you to be aware of that. But it wasn't the EPA, right? It was the revolution in natural gas by the private sector and ingenuity of the American entrepreneur. Let me go into the next very important issue. You believe in the rule of law, I assume?
Yes.
You were at the Harvard Environmental Energy and Law program, so I'm assuming you really believe in the rule of law.
Trying to overcome it, but yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. It's tough. I don't blame you, though. How about this issue? EPA gets all of its authority from what body to act?
I think right here.
Exactly. Right? You used to work here, right? EPW committee. So you understand the EPA cannot act without congressional authority. Isn't that correct?
That's my understanding.
So that's something you'll commit to, correct? That goes back to the rule of law.
And it goes back to the Clean Air Act.
Correct. But you won't act without clear congressional authority, correct?
We act according to what our best understanding.
These are really easy questions.
Yes.
You need to just say yes. Thank you. Let me raise one issue. It wasn't you, but you worked for at the time. This was the Michigan versus EPA case where the Supreme Court, 6-3, by the way, said EPA strayed well beyond the bounds of reasonable interpreting in concluding that cost is not a factor relevant to the appropriateness of the regulation of power plants. You're familiar with that case, right?
I am familiar with that.
Okay, because weren't you part of the individuals who put together that rule?
Yes, I was.
And are you familiar with the famous, again, unbelievable statement by current climate czar Gina McCarthy on the Bill Maher show right before the Supreme Court decision came down? She said, quote, "But even if we don't win, it's been on the books for 3 years, so most power plants are already in compliance. Investments have been made," unquote. To me, that was one of the most lawless things I've ever seen a senior administration official say. That's when she was the EPA administrator. To me, that's regulatory extortion. Hey, we'll crush or we'll put out rules, and heck, even if they're not legal, it doesn't matter because these poor suckers have to comply with it anyways. Can you explain, do you agree with that statement by Gina McCarthy? And can you commit to me to not be so flippant with the whole issue of the rule of law and the statutory mandates from Congress? That statement to me still to this day stands out as one of the most just blatant, arrogant, lawless statements I've ever seen from a senior official who's supposed to serve the people and abide by the rule of law.
Senator, I'm not familiar with that statement.
What I just quoted is true.
Okay,
Do you agree with her statement?
I'd have to. I don't know. I'm still processing it. It's the first time I've heard it, but I do agree, and I am committed to ensure that any action the Office of Air and Radiation takes is entirely authorized by the law, not only by what Congress wrote in the Clean Air Act, but what the courts tell us the exact contours and limits and scope of our authority is.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Goffman, I wanted to follow up again on that issue that I talked about on the Clean Power Plan rule that the Supreme Court ruled was a violation of EPA statutory powers from the Congress. I'm a little concerned that move by Gina McCarthy, which again she publicly stated, hey, heck, even if we don't win, it was 3 years ago, all the power plants, most are already in compliance, investments have already been made. Again, shocking disregard for the rule of law in America. I'm a little worried about the electric generating unit, EGU, strategy announced by Administrator Reagan that could have the same kind of impact where it's an overreach on your statutory authority. You guys mandate that everybody complies. It's billions of dollars of compliance. What can you do to assure this committee that you're not going to be undertaking the same Gina McCarthy lawless strategy that she did with the Clean Power Rule that the Supreme Court 6-3 ruled was not within EPA's statutory mandate?
Well, one of the things I want to confirm is that Administrator Regan himself, the current EPA administrator, is absolutely committed in word and in his deeds as a leader to following the rule of law.
I believe that. I happen to like Administrator Regan. I think he's someone who believes in the state's role, and so just if you can commit to me to work with him and this committee to make sure that kind of lawless Gina McCarthy maneuver doesn't happen again, can you commit to me that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Let me go to the issue of ethics and conflicts. I've written the IG at the Department of Interior. There's a number of senior officials at the Department of Interior who are making decisions on issues in which in the private sector they were leaders on environmental groups and then meeting with these same groups later. That's clearly a violation of ethics in my view. I've asked for investigations by the IG at Department of Interior. I did notice that you had a bit of a dust up on this issue as part of your 2-year bar on meeting with folks from the Harvard University Environmental Energy and Law program and the EPA Director of Ethics mentioned that you should have recused yourself. Am I stating that correctly, or I don't want to misinterpret that? But can you make a commitment to me on the issue of ethics that you comply fully with those? It looks like you did have some kind of issue where you were, I think, somewhat reprimanded for not immediately recusing yourself. I'm quoting from the EPA Ethics Director. Am I getting that right, and did you learn a lesson from that?
I certainly did. The lesson I learned involved an email from a former colleague at Harvard, which I forwarded to an EPA employee. The lesson I learned is don't just read the subject line, read the from address to make sure that I am absolutely 110% complying with my recusal obligation.
In that recusal was a 2-year bar of meeting with people you had been working with, and I understand that. And again, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it. I read the record. It looks like it was an honest mistake. A less honest mistake, though, seems to be Gina McCarthy recently met with the head of the NRDC at the White House, and this was only 8 months after she had been head of the NRDC. To me, that's just like a blanket violation of her ethics agreement. How is it ethical for Gina McCarthy to meet with her former employee less than a year from joining the administration?
I'm not qualified to answer that question.
But if if it's a 2-year ban, she met with him after 8 months, isn't that a violation of ethics? You wouldn't do that, would you?
My recusal commitment is 2 years.
So is hers.
I don't know that I really.
Assume hers is. Isn't that a violation of her ethical obligations?
Senator Sullivan, I hate to interrupt, but
Mr. Chairman, these are important issues.
I know they're important, and I've been very
in
generous.
the Department of Interior, they're violating ethics laws.
Senator Sullivan, I'm
on a daily
always
basis.
very generous in providing time for you to go over and beyond the time that's allotted. Finish
No
up,
one
and we
waiting
need-
on me, Mr. Chairman. These are really
We have a
ethics
vote
in
underway.
The
We
federal
have other
government
business
are
to
really
take.
important issues. I'd just like an answer, and I'd like a commitment to make sure you abide by ethics. But is Gina McCarthy currently abiding by ethics? The answer is no. Right? The answer is no. So can I get a commitment from you to do that, to not follow the suit of your current and former boss? The example of her.
I remain in continual contact with Ethics Counsel, and because I want to be 100% on the mark in implementing my own recusal requirements.
I believe you,
and
but I just think it's important.
And I agree it's important. And often what Ethics Counsel will tell me is that large group meetings, for example, can be permissible even if they include a former employer. So that's why I was hesitating. I did not know what the circumstances were, still don't know what the circumstances were of Ms. McCarthy's meeting because those circumstances could provide the answer to your question as to whether or not she was in violation.
Well, I think she was, but thank you for the answer and thank you for your commitment. I'll have one more follow-up question on a PM 2.5 issue in Fairbanks that we hope you will continue the good work that the EPA had been doing with the state and the borough there. I know you're familiar with it. And
yes.
We actually really appreciate the constructive approach the EPA has been taking on that tough issue in Alaska. I'm sure you're familiar with it, and appreciate your commitment to continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.